This is NTV.
All right, a very good morning to you. First of all, I need to apologize for starting extremely late, but here we are. And of course, today we want to talk about something that I think all of us should have a bit of information, not a bit, we have correct information about. And this is as far as egg freezing is concerned right here on Your World. Because again, as times go by, we're seeing a lot of women who are choosing to have babies a little bit later. And of course, a lot of people would say, yeah, it's because of different reasons here and there. Or sometimes, there are couples who are trying but are not able to have babies at the moment they want to have the babies. So again, what is it? What are some of the possible solutions that are available, for this couples, I would say, or women? Well, you want to stick around until the end of the show to understand much more on the same. But if you have a question as far as egg freezing is concerned, again, feel free to interact with us as well. And that is at NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on Twitter. So to help us understand this whole aspect, as far as egg freezing is concerned, we have Dr. Wanjiru Ndegwa, who is a fertility expert and, of course, the founder of Footsteps to Fertility Center right here in Nairobi, here to help us really understand what egg freezing is all about, and harvesting, and how long can you store them for, and what happens when you are ready to have a family or a child. So Dr. it's a lot that we need to go through, and thank you for being patient for us with us really this morning, even as we sort out our issues, but here we are, right? So how are you feeling? How are you doing this morning?
I'm great, Winnie, and it's always a pleasure to sit by you and just give some knowledge to patients who are struggling, or generally women, and I guess generally anybody who needs to know this information.
Absolutely. All right, so let's just first of all get to understand fertility, right? I know it's usually a very sensitive conversation to have. A lot of people would feel differently as far as infertility, is concerned. But how are we doing? First of all, I know there was I think I studied sometime last year, if I can say, where of course they're talking about how infertility is actually on the rise, but the biggest concern was on younger men, right? And the quality of the sperm and all that. But really, you interact with a lot of patients. How are we doing?
I like that you said there's a lot of stigma in regards to infertility, because remember when we started talking about this show, you asked me to get someone, and none of the people who have frozen have actually said, let's talk about it. So you even see in that context, there's a lot of stigma. To answer your question, fertility is a big issue. In the world today, there is an incline in terms of the patients who are seeking our services. And even when we started in 2015, we've seen a great incline in terms of the number of patients who are seeking, one, because of knowledge, but because also there are more problems. We estimate that about 1 in 8 couples are struggling to conceive, and that's a huge number.
That's a huge number, absolutely. And what are some of the things that we could attribute this to?
To be honest, the biggest cause is age factor. Okay. It's said, and everywhere in the world, the biggest factor is that women are coming later to conceive. And it's okay. When I look back and I think about my grandmother, your grandmother didn't have a career. Right, No. I thought about it, but we have careers. So I think for the modern woman, we do need to get everything together. We need to, we need to be educated. We need to climb the social ladder, the corporate ladder. And therefore, we are coming a little later. And that's the number one cause right now in the world, to be honest.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know majority of the times when we talk about that biological clock, a lot of women don't want to hear that, but the reality is time does not pause, right? And it is much as, yes, you'd want to have your career in check, maybe your finances in check, and everything else in check before you, want to start a family. Again, time flies, right? So what are the possible solutions? What is it? What is there that women can do? Yes. Even as we, plan our lives on this other end?
Yeah, and it's a good question, because I don't want to say that egg freezing is the all in all, but I do want to educate people on the availability of the option. Yeah. And I'm saying this because, to be honest, the best time to have your children is in your late 20s and your early 30s, because your career has not sprung up. You're still, at 40, at 45, you're in the depth of your career, and it's really hard at that time to manage everything. So I'd still tell women and couples who are out there, please don't wait too long. Please let's think about raising children as we're raising our other, aspects of life, because I think it's really, really important to go back to where we were, and it's something I tell almost everything. But that's the perfect scenario, Winnie. Not everybody has found a spouse by late 20s, early 30s. A lot of people are still wondering, okay, is this even for me? And that's okay, because the world has changed. So there are options of egg freezing, but that's not the only reason we freeze eggs. And initially, it was there for medical reasons. Yeah. So I'll just say that the most common reason why it started, I think the first pregnancy by a frozen oocyte, which is an egg, was achieved in 1986. So that's a really long time ago. Yeah, and you see that's more than almost 40 years, and it's not yet developed as a real science because of the methods and everything. But the biggest reason was at that point for patients who were going through oncofertility. So about 10% of women in their reproductive age will have or be diagnosed with a cancer. And if you know that cancer medication, whether it's chemotherapy or radiotherapy, or sometimes we have to actually remove the ovaries and the uterus for some patients, especially patients who have cancer of the breast that may be sensitive to estrogen, those types of women who are now having a better prognostic factor, meaning they will live after their treatment, would want the chance to have children. Yet these medications will deplete their eggs. So it's a good area. It's a very good innovation for patients who are diagnosed with cancer, and have a good survival rate. But there are also other patients. Last month in March was endometriosis month, and endometriosis is a disease that may affect the ovaries. So for even patients like this, now there's something called endofertility. So for patients who may have endometriosis, which is scarring the ovaries, we're telling them, okay, yes, you haven't found a spouse, but we do know endometriosis is a chronic disease. It will get worse. It may affect your ovaries to the fact that we may not have any eggs. So you can freeze earlier on. So there are those types of things. Patients with autoimmune diseases like lupus and stuff, those diseases sometimes are treated with medication that may also deplete our ovaries in terms of eggs. And therefore also those patients, it's good to tell them, okay, there are options. You may have lupus and it's something that is chronic, but we can freeze your eggs before. So there are many medical conditions that allow us to freeze, and I think that's the big innovation. That's why we started looking into that. And there are also patients who may have genetic predispositions, and I think this is an important fact for some women, because your mother may have undergone premature menopause. So for that type of woman, you are also at a genetic risk of undergoing premature menopause. And you see, your mother probably had you at or 21. But as we're waiting until we're 30. So by the time you're 30, 35, 38, you may have no eggs because premature menopause that was genetic. So we're trying to seek out these women and tell them, okay, for you, this may be the option. So there are proper medical reasons why we do oocyte freezing.
conversations, because a lot of women might be struggling and don't know what exactly is the cause. You seek alternative, medication, but nothing is being done. And then again, like we talked about the whole aspect of stigma, you're being blamed every single day. Absolutely. So I like that. I like that aspect of the same. But again, like we said, others who prefer to have everything else sorted and then have children later, this is also an option that they can consider. And it's interesting because a friend of mine, she's very young, so when I sent out the poster and she was like, you know what, this is something that I'm seriously considering. So I'll be tuned in. So I hope she's watching, and all those things. But let's just then get to the basics. So then what exactly does that mean when we say freezing eggs?
So freezing eggs doesn't mean putting them in a fridge, because some people have no idea. Yeah. First of all, I want to say it's offered in Kenya, because it is available. The options are available. But freezing eggs is really part of the egg harvesting, and the egg growth has to occur. So it's not just, I want to freeze eggs. You do have to come in for a consultation, because there are patients we tell it may not be for you, and you also need to get some counseling before you do this, because it's not an insurance policy, to be honest. So what the process looks like is that you would come in, we would assess your ovarian count. So how many eggs do you have in each of your ovaries? That's now your count. And based on that, so some women have 4, some women have 7 eggs on each ovary, which is the normal. 7 eggs that come every single month. Yes.
Because they say when you were born, women, we have is it over 1 million? Right, and millions of eggs, but then that depletes as we age.
But every month there are a certain number that come out and start the race, because we only ovulate 1 or 2 eggs really. So, but it doesn't mean that every month it's just 1 egg coming out. It's actually a couple that there's survival, fit for the survival. And this type of, so it's about the normal count is about 14 every month. So what we try to do in an egg freezing process is optimize the number that we can collect. So instead of the 1 that we would ovulate, we give you medication, and the medication that we give on the lower abdomen in form of injections, usually for 10 to 12 days. So it's intense in terms of the time, given at the same time every day. You do have scans to monitor the growth of the eggs, and sometimes we also do hormone tests just to monitor how are they growing and are they responding the way we would like. And then usually after the 10 to 12 days, depending on what your progress is, we give you the last shot that you usually give at night, and then 36 hours later is when we usually do an egg collection. Now, egg collection means that we do a small procedure in theater where we do sedate you just for ease and pain relief. So you're sedated for about 15 minutes. So it's a very short procedure. We don't do any cuts, but we do go through the transvaginal scan, which is what we use to monitor. We put a needle at the end, and we're able to go through the birth canal and actually suck the eggs out of the follicle. And then now those eggs are put in a test tube, just like the IVF procedure, put in a test tube and then given to the lab. So in the lab, that's where they check under the microscope how many eggs they've gotten. They incubate them for a little time for stabilization in terms of temperatures and other pH levels, and they're put in a media. And then within about 2 hours or even less, they are then frozen in a straw. And actually, that's the end of your process.
Okay, all right. Seems like a very easy, seamless process, but also still a lot happens before, which again, I like the fact that you had to, just take us through what exactly happens, the injections and all those things. And like you said, it can be very intense. So, yeah.
Remember, we're
right? Yeah.
Emotional.
It's a lot of things.
It's a lot of things, yes.
We'll talk about that. So we're sort of like stimulating the growth. Right?
Yes, yeah.
So is there a specific number that is supposed to sort of like be harvested?
So the thing is, it's individualized. So I may have only 2 eggs in my ovaries, so I will only get 2. Even if I put as much medication as possible, I get 2, because that's what every month I'm producing. So the patients will give you 20, the patients will give you 60. There's, yes. we've collected 60 oocytes here. So it really depends on what your body, and that's why it's a very individualized treatment. But what we do think is, in terms of an egg freezing, we prefer that we get 15 to 20. That's a really good number, and 15 to 20 gives us a chance of a live birth, because at the end we're freezing oocytes or eggs because we want to get children later. So we advise that 15 to 20 mature oocytes has a probability of about 60% of giving us a live birth. So that's the number that we really want. Yeah.
And then age, important factor, because again, like you said, you have to come in consultation and then, you know, see who is sort of like an ideal candidate or not. So so what makes an ideal candidate, what makes a not so good ideal candidate?
I think that's a very, very important question.
Yeah.
Because age is everything, to be honest. The younger you are, that's the time we're getting the 60, oocytes, because you're young, your eggs are many. But if you're coming at, say, 44, 45, we're going to get 1, we're going to get 2. So you will need, a lot of freezing to get the number that will probably give us the highest chance of a live birth. Okay. So in terms of what we think is cost effective, because it's also an expensive process, but also going to lead to the live birth, we say that the proper age is about 32 to 37 to actually freeze. That's the age where at least we have a good number of oocytes, probably the 14, the 15, up to 20. That we may also not need to do it twice or 3 times to get a cohort as many, because of course if you're coming at 45 and we're getting 1, you could get pregnant, but it's highly unlikely, to be honest. So 32 to 37 is the appropriate age. Why I'm not saying the younger ones is because at 21 or 22, I'm just starting out life. I really don't know whether I'll meet my partner tomorrow. And then I have actually frozen oocytes that I didn't really need to do. So there's also a cost effectiveness and also a usage, because we don't also want to just have oocytes stored up or eggs stored up. We really want that they are used and actually then result into a live birth. So that's the age. But for patients who have those premature ovarian failures or have endo, or of course are undergoing chemotherapy or cancer, those are now the ones for 20s or earlier on, so that later on they will be able to have their children.
Okay. All right. So beyond what? Because someone might come and be like 50 and I need to sort of like freeze my eggs.
We're not gonna
no.
50. To be honest, after 43, decline in fertility is crazy. And I want to say it very clearly on TV, because I think people need to know. I have a lot of patients who come at 44, 45, and I'm like, there's really nothing we can help you, because there are no eggs. Really, really no eggs. The chance of you getting a pregnancy, even with an IVF cycle, is less than 5%.
That's true.
And therefore, freezing one poor quality oocyte versus the amount it costs, it really doesn't make sense, because the probability of you getting pregnant is low. So we don't just do things, we do things with the intent of helping you get future children. So it's really important that people have proper information about what this process is, and that's why I think the knowledge of egg freezing is very important, because you should do it earlier. So if I'm 32 or 33 and I'm thinking, okay, I'm not meeting somebody, I'm traveling to do my master's, it's going to take 4 years, I don't know, please do it before. Then at 38, 40, and this is how all these stars in the US have done, have gotten their children, all these Gabrielle Unions and who was very vocal about it. I think the person who was vocal was Jennifer Aniston, and saying she wishes she knew. Because it's out there, it's available, but and stuff happens. Life happens. You might not be ready now, but at 32, you are a much better candidate of egg freezing than at
or even 42. Some people who are not sure whether they want kids or not, right? And then maybe later on be like, you know what, maybe I really want, and sometimes it might be late. So maybe consider freezing now, even as you think about, whether you want to have kids or not. Okay. So like we said, the process before can be a little bit intense. So what is it that women really need to know? Because like you said, it's not just about coming in, harvesting and then freezing the eggs. There's a lot that happens, before, with the injections and all those things. So really, what is it that 1, 2, maybe 3, things that people need to know as far as egg freezing? We talked about the course, which again, I think we'll talk about later. But even just before the whole process, the side effects, maybe, the reaction from the injections.
So, okay, it's not terrible, to be honest. Let me not make it sound like it's something that's
so scary and don't,
scary. Yeah. And people go through it and they're like, oh, that was not bad.
Yeah.
The biggest thing I've seen is the emotions, because we're giving you a lot of hormones to get you to give us, instead of the one, get us 14 or whatever eggs that we can get to collect. So of course, some people come and cry. It's a roller coaster of emotions. That's the biggest thing. But you may also have a little bit of headache. You may have some nausea, there's bloating and a bit of heaviness on your lower abdomen, some constipation sometimes if the eggs are really a lot. But I think, to be honest, that's all.
It's not,
it's not terrible.
Too bad.
And once we freeze, once we go through the minor operation to remove the oocytes, that's it. Yeah.
And we're going to see the tanks. But so we're talking about this before we came on, that there's some people who freeze eggs and others freeze embryos, right? So can we just talk about then this embryo freezing part versus eggs? Yes.
So egg freezing is for a lot of times patients who are not married, who want their future fertility, young girls, or but there are patients who have had an IVF cycle, which usually is the same, but instead of freezing the eggs, we now put them together with the male gamete, the sperm, and then now it becomes an embryo. So we may be freezing embryos because they're excess, in terms of we have 8 embryos, they're good quality, but we can't put back or do an embryo transfer or put the embryos in your uterus. We can't put 8 because we don't want you to be octomom. We just want 1 or 2, and not even 3. So for those couples, we will freeze, so that in the next, once they have their child, if they're blessed with that, they can come for another child from the embryos that were frozen.
Okay. All right. And also, we talked about sperm. You can just freeze the sperm alone, right?
Yeah, and I think it's good that people know, because again, I am seeing with the new world, I live in the States, my husband lives here, we want to conceive, but I come because of work and pressure, I can only come for 2 weeks. And several years go by, but nothing opens up and we're not getting pregnant. So what do we do? So we are seeing more couples who are long distance in terms of where they live. So the men can freeze their sperm, and we can actually do something called artificial insemination on the wives, or for that. And even for young men who are maybe going to go through cancer treatment as well, especially for testicular cancer, which is more common in young men, or any other cancer where they're going to use medication that is gonadotrophic. Those types of patients, we're telling them, please come and freeze, because you have a chance later to have children.
I see that. All right. So and again, it's good. People just have information that all those options are available. So then, during the process of harvesting, right? So are you able to tell the quality, maybe, of the eggs, and which one? Okay, not viable, but yeah. But are you? Yes.
So the only thing about freezing oocytes, which is different from freezing embryos, I'm able to see that this embryo is very beautiful, and it is, sorry, that's what I use, and my patients are like, what are you saying? What's beautiful? But it looks viable, and it looks like we will achieve a live pregnancy. Because it's a formed unit and it looks a certain way. For an oocyte, I cannot predict as well as we would have wanted whether it will achieve a fertilization first or whether it will go to live birth. But now there's a lot of AI going about, artificial intelligence being used in the US currently, getting algorithms as to what oocyte in terms of the pictures, because we're filming a lot, we have more visualization techniques to tell us this oocyte has a probability of this to fertilize. So, I mean, things are so amazing in science. So we will be in the future be able to better predict that. Right now, we can say there is a study that has shown that per oocyte, depending on age also, there's a certain percentage, but it's not yet an exact science.
Okay. I see that. Okay. So for the majority of patients that you see, what is like the age group that we're seeing now in the country? Yes, who are coming to freeze?
Unfortunately, they're older. They're the 35 to 42. I am not seeing younger yet, but I hope with the education, then we make decisions. But also, honestly, we need to also remember it's expensive. So by the time I'm making money enough to do an egg freezing, I'm also, you know, further along in my career as well and older. I don't know if insurance will ever cover it. We are hoping so. I know in the US, big techs like Apple and all these Yahoos and Googles are covering it for women. And I think it is something that hopefully in the future is looked into.
Absolutely. Because again, like you're saying, when we were talking about this earlier, when you said your tanks are full or almost full. So yeah, it means that then there's sort of like a demand, right? It's a need that a lot of women are actually considering. Okay, so someone might ask, so fine, consultation, see if you are an ideal candidate or not. Maybe go through, you know, the process. So what happens after, harvest, you go freeze, then what happens? What happens to me as a person? Go about your life or?
Yes, about your life. We do have contracts with because of course we need to understand what would happen to the oocytes in case something happened to you. You know, those and eventualities. Yes, there are lots of things that we consider. Yeah. So there's a contract, but our contracts for now are 5 years. So within 5 years, we do hope that you have come back and told us, I've met my Mr. Right. We are in a relationship or married, preferably. And therefore, we want to start a family. And now maybe I'm 40. So I've been trying maybe for a year. And I think let's use the oocytes. So what happens is we thaw the oocytes. So thaw means we remove them from the freezing compartment. We allow them to come back, equilibrate in the natural environment in an incubator. We check them, and then they are each oocyte is fertilized. We have to do an ICSI, which means that we inject each oocyte with a sperm. So frozen oocytes, we cannot just leave them the IVF process. We actually have to inject because of technicalities. So once we do the fertilization process, in about 3 to 5 days after, we will put them back into your womb. Of course, as a lady, you'll have your womb is being prepared with some medication to accept the embryo. Yeah, so it's the natural, the IVF process kind of continues. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, after that. Okay, all right. So then, majority of the times we would say it's not a guarantee, and like you said, this is not like a life insurance, right? No. Something could happen. So do you just inject 1 or 2 or maybe 3? Because again, like we said, we don't know which one would be, you know, will be viable. Yeah.
I think on a straw we usually freeze a maximum of 5. I'll show you what a straw looks like, and therefore whatever is in that compartment we will have to thaw. We can't thaw half and half. Yeah. So we will thaw and put them together. Okay. Our preference, of course, is if of course you're married, we're not likely to move or change. Yeah. We would remove all the oocytes we've frozen for you, at least 15 or 20, put them together, and then see the best. And then now, that's the best way.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happens to the ones that are not? Yeah.
Embryos.
Okay. Oh yeah. And now they're not going back as eggs; they're going back as embryos, and then you decide how long you want to have them for. Yeah.
Then we try for another one, or if it doesn't work, then we can try for another one. But we have the embryos.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So in one setting, maybe you introduce to the womb like 2 or 3. Like you said, we can't go beyond.
It's sometimes even 1. It depends on how beautiful the womb looks, how beautiful the embryo looks. Because I think it's important for people to know that twins are amazing, but the pregnancy can be very difficult. They can come out at 34 weeks or earlier. They can need incubation that is hundreds. I mean, I've seen patients come and cry, my bill is 4 million. Yes, my twins are okay, but I'm left with a bill of 4 million. Had we put 1 and then 1 again, you know, so sometimes we have to think also about what happens later.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about we take a break? But then when we come back, we'll go see, you know, the tanks and you call them some names, but I'm just gonna try not pronounce them because she is the specialist in the room. But if you have any question for Dr. Wanjiru as far as egg freezing is concerned, feel free to also send them our way at NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on Twitter. But of course, when we come back, we'll show you what exactly happens when we talk about freezing. So stay with us. This is Your World. See you very shortly.
Unity Homes invites you to our open week from the 15th to the 23rd of April at Tatu City off Thika Superhighway. Come view our vast array of high-quality projects ranging from 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom apartments. Book your unit today by calling us on 0701 550 550.
As he healed that lady, that woman of 12 years of bleeding, he's here today. The same supernatural healing that took place at this time, today it is taking place in Jesus' name. Bible says it's the same yesterday. Jesus the same yesterday, today and forevermore. I prophesy to you. This is your day. This is your hour. This is your moment. Receive your healing in Jesus' name. Can I hear somebody say more fire? Somebody shout cheese. Supernatural healing.
As a student, start building a professional network by attending corporate events for the industries in which you want to build your career.
Are leaders born or made? Park University demystifies this paradox and responds by transforming every student enrolled into the leaders Africa needs. Apply now or simply log on to www.parkuniversity.ac.ke.
Park University, where leaders are made.
What's that?
I brought you a small bonus.
Bonus for what?
You got us 299 family dinners, 64 kisses on the cheek, 12 road trips to see grandma, 42 jokes from daddy, 49 laughs from mommy.
In over 60 years of dealing with numbers, we've learned that the numbers that matter the most to you are the ones that matter the most to us. NCBA Bank. Go for it.
This week on Twende, we will visit the only national park in South Nyanza. Over here you can see 3 of the big 5, including the animal they call Muga. We will learn of the most endangered animal in Kenya, which is found only in this park. And what does this park have to do with the Gor Mahia Football Club? Come with me and find out.
This is The Greatest Show. The London Marathon Marathon, 23rd April, live on NTV.
Yo, Butruse K, the sharp god up in the mix. Now I'm saying NTV, shout out to you, bro. Keep it locked. Hey.
Sauti yako ina sound vizuri kwenye masikio.
I like it. Come to the dance floor, babe.
Angie.
Leo tuna festa fe banga.
Festa fe banga. Another banga. And it's just like an amazing mix.
I am happy today. Sin koma vitu unanilea.
Oh yeah. Inaweka shida chini na tupa mikono juu. Banjuka tu.
No compromise, this the hottest combo.
Unistima, uninare.
On NTV, don't touch that dial. Not yet. No,
I have to give you credit for that brilliant idea you had. About the bribe thing that you did.
If you took a bribe, just face it.
I want to show you something. That's right, Anna! Hit it again! Go on! Good job! Tell me.
They found the IP address where the bribe video had been sent from. It's a computer at the Cherkasy Silikatput's Department of Development.
We have been wondering. Figure out who might want to set up Andrei Popovich. Maybe it wasn't him who took the money. Listen to me, doesn't Anna work at that same building and department as you?
Yes, she does work there. Why did you ask me that?
I just wanted to make sure that she works there.
Kama si Mungu amesema, mepana tambua. Wakisema utafeli.
To get Hapana Tambua by Boss MOG, dial star 811 star 936 hash. Skiza na Nation.
Good morning, rise and shine. Thank you for being with us dark and early on the Morning Fix. My name is David Ayuke.
And I'm Mariam Bashar. This is where good music lives, and guaranteed your weekday mornings are never going to be the same again.
Wake up to the sound of David and Mariam on Nation FM.
Every single day.
They're your morning hosts with the most, bringing you the energy you need to start your day. Nation FM, where good music lives.
Let me see y'all.
Dance.
All right, welcome back. This is Your World. And of course, today we're talking about something that, like I said, all of us should have the correct information. And this is as far as egg freezing is concerned. And of course, we're here at Footsteps to Fertility Center to understand more about egg freezing. And of course, on the first part, we talked to Dr. Onjiri Ndegwa, who took us through the whole process as far as egg freezing is concerned. But like we promised you, we'll be showing you the tanks. We talked about the tanks. I know a lot of you are curious to understand, okay, so what are these tanks and all those things? So Dr. Onjiri, there's a lot happening here. There's big ones, there's small ones, there's I don't know which ones.
Yes. So our storage room. We are fortunate that we've only been in operations for about, I think, 5 to 7 years really doing this, and therefore we don't have too many samples, but still this is actually thousands of samples right here. So this is the private or the closed up room where we actually store patient samples. So this is a closed room where we actually store the patient samples, we have two big tanks. These have the embryos, as we said, and these have gametes, so either the eggs or some frozen sperm. And for these other storage tanks, these are actually where we may have samples that have some contamination in terms of either HIV or hepatitis. So we don't keep all samples together. Okay. So it's important sometimes we do, before we start an IVF or oocyte process, we ask the patients to do HIV, hepatitis B, C, and syphilis. Okay. And some patients are so worried, okay, does that mean if I have, then we don't? No, it doesn't. It's just to help us store properly. Okay. To avoid cross-contamination. And then we have a small storage tank, there, which is a transport tank. So sometimes we may get embryos or oocytes from another center. So this is what we would bring them with, because it's smaller, we will just put. And then we have this tank that holds our liquid nitrogen. So that's liquid nitrogen right there.
All right. And then you have some
hand. Yeah. So what is on my hand are actually the straws. I don't know if you can see it, Winnie. So these are the straws. They're actually
tiny.
Very, very tiny. Yeah. And they're sterile, sorry, so I can't remove them.
We can't remove them.
Yeah.
Okay.
One straw, these are 5. One straw can actually have about, depending, 5 to 8 oocytes stored on them. Okay. So for a patient, we probably maybe this pack if you have a lot, or maybe at least half a pack.
Okay.
Yeah.
They are very tiny. Like, can you imagine, like, they fit in here?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes. So they have enough space for us to write your name, to write your clinic number, and so that's what is stored here in the information in terms of a permanent marker. Okay. Yeah, before we store.
Okay. All right. So we have Matthew, and then maybe just want to tell us, Matthew, what he does, and you know how important he is, and just help us understand all those things.
So Matthew is a junior embryologist, and he is very important in this aspect. There are people for the lab. So because I am not usually the one who touches everything, I don't want to touch anything. So I just wanted Matt to just show you what's inside and how we actually store in one of the tanks. So he will just show you what is the process. So these, as you can see, there are very many straws, and they are color coded. They are actually also put in something that is also color coded, just so that we have exact information. And if you see, there's even a code on where. So there's tank A at 1, which is orange in a yellow sleeve. So we have really a lot of information so that we don't mix up patient samples as well. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So a lot of things. Number one, color coordination is important because you want to remember who's whose. Yeah. Yeah. And those are a lot. So ideally, how many oocytes? Straws. I think, is it straws?
Yeah, that's a straw. So one straw. How many can be in a compartment? Depends on different tanks. So these tanks have higher. These are smaller, so they may have at least 30 to 40 on one canister. Yeah, one area like that. Yeah.
All right. And the temperature.
Yes, so
frozen.
This is liquid nitrogen, and liquid nitrogen. So this tank usually is full of liquid nitrogen to fill up these ones, and that's done every 4 days. So liquid nitrogen is minus 196 degrees centigrade. So the embryos and the oocytes, or the eggs that are frozen, are kept at very low temperatures so that they don't change, they don't die, and at those temperatures they can actually live for a very long time.
Okay, because I was about to ask you, so then how long can one freeze their eggs or embryos?
Yeah, ideally we want you to come for them in 5 years, because really, and we may renew your contract to maybe a 10-year, but after 10 years we don't like it. But to be honest, Winnie, there's a child who was born of embryos that were 32 years in Australia recently.
Yes, I saw that. So are they 32 years old, or are they?
They've been actually 32 years in a tank like this somewhere in the world. So I mean, science is amazing. Ethically, I don't know, but science is amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So, like you said, most of your tanks are full.
Yes, unfortunately. Yeah, we have to buy.
Does that say? Because I know in the country it's a little bit a bit of a gray area in terms of then do you discard them, do you not, do you, what happens after? Yeah. So I don't know what you have to say to that. Yeah.
So for oocytes, I mean, it's very easy. I mean, if you want your oocytes to, if you had your children, suppose, and you got pregnant and now don't need them, but most people will still keep them because they don't know about the future. So there is, of course, a pay every year for storage because the tanks are expensive. Replenishing liquid nitrogen is expensive. There is a contract that says that you may want to take them or not. So it's still a gray area, but most people will still upkeep their embryos because you don't know about the future.
That's true. That's true. Or donation? You can't just do that. Yeah.
For me, but for this clinic, other clinics may, but I don't donate embryos.
Okay.
No.
I see that. Okay. So several tanks, several, would say straws, because now you. Cryo straws, the small ones, the big ones, and of course, like we said, we cannot go upstairs because again the lab needs to be sterile. So just take us through what exactly happens, in the
so
lab.
Unfortunately, we're having a procedure, as I told you, in 30 minutes, so we're not able to go to the sterile environment. But we'd love to have you at another point when we are. So what happens in the lab is usually, so there is the embryology lab, and there's a theater, so where we pick up the oocytes. Remember I told you it's a surgical procedure where we actually surgically remove the oocytes. Then we give it to the lab. In the lab, that's where they look under a large microscope, find each of the oocytes. Then there's a big incubator which has the temperatures and all the pH levels that are required for the oocyte just to be normal. We put them in there for a little bit, and then the freezing process also occurs in the same. So there are solutions that we use with some dishes to actually freeze the oocytes there.
All right. Okay. And again, like you said, has to be at a specific temperature, right? But the outside temperature. Because now in there, of course, it has to be like minus 196, but outside temperature?
Needs to be, the lab is at body temperature, so we actually keep the temperatures at that. The incubator is actually at 36 to 38 degrees centigrade there. So those are 37, that's the degrees that we keep here. Here, because it's in a tank, as long as we keep it in a dry and of course not sun exposed area, the temperatures will keep.
Okay. And then of course you have to,
Yes, you have to be a bit sterile.
Listen, because again, you don't want to, anything to happen, to them. All right. And then, like you said, this has to be kept under lock and key.
Yes.
Right.
So we do keep this under lock because these are people's babies or oocytes or We also have preserved sperm here. So yes.
All right. And like we talked about viability, and some might not be viable, so it has to be kept under the correct temperature, under the correct, everything has to be on point. So is there anything that can happen that tamper with the viability? Like, yes, when they're harvested, they're beautiful.
Yes.
Like you said, they're beautiful. But is there anything that can happen to, tamper with the same viability?
Of course. I mean, a lot of things. I think one is that they don't all thaw. So we may have 10 oocytes and they don't thaw. But with technology, and what we use a process called vitrification, ultra-fast vitrification right now, the thaw rate is about 95 to 96%. So it's really good. Before there was something called slow freezing, which is a technique. We would get 80% or even 70% of thawing. So that's the most important thing, the technique you use, and that your people are actually educated and know how to do the processes. So that's one thing that can affect viability. But also, to be honest, we also need to store good oocytes. So we can't get what we didn't have in the beginning. So it's very important to have an embryologist who understands who is good, who is not, and only stores that. Because if we store everything then it won't, and therefore that's why sometimes we will have more oocytes, but we only store what is good.
Okay, I see that. And then this can't just be opened and closed and opened and closed, because then again we interfere with right?
And that's why it's under lock and key. You must have a thumb imprint to come in here.
Okay. All right. And on we talked about maybe after 5 years, I come to you and say, you know what, I am ready, right? We begin the whole process, you know. Of course, you have to thaw, like you said, and then IVF, you know, all those things that happen. So in the event that one says, you know what, I'm happy with baby number one, you know, so what happens to the rest? You still refreeze them?
No, that's now up to them.
Okay.
So
they
if they don't want to refreeze their embryos or refreeze their oocytes, that's fine.
give them, them to decide. Okay. But what if they say, fine, so we're trying for number one, we got number one, let's just wait a little bit longer. So that is when you refreeze them.
Yes.
So do you have like a specific duration of time that, you know, we cannot continue to refreeze? Because a lot of people are actually...
that's one of the issues. Because I mean, at 50, are you coming? At 52, are you going to come back? So I'm saying, really, I'm very lucky we've not been in operation for 20 years. I'm sure after 20 years we'll have those problems and we'll deal with them then. But we are hoping that Kenya has laws then that are very clear cut and that give us guidance and structure as to what to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's cost. Okay. Cost is a very big issue, and like you said, this is not covered by insurance at the moment, and we hope that we will get there. But so ideally, what does that look like?
So the cost, one depends on your stimulation protocol. So the medication that you use, some patients use up to 200,000 in terms of medication, which is really huge. But that's, I mean, the older you are, sometimes we have to give you stronger and better medication. So for those patients, that's already 200 is just meds. We've not talked about the lab cost. We've not talked about the technicality, the theater and stuff. So it may be 400, 450. Usually that's where it goes to.
And also for storage, there has to be a charge,
cost that is charged every year.
Yeah.
We're hoping now that we have more and more that we can reduce the cost, because then it's shared among the patients. But right now we're at 50,000 per year. But which is not bad, because if you look at that, that's like how much? 3,000 per month.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You decide. Okay. So then very quickly, just to understand then the process. So after freezing, I am ready. I know we talked a little bit about it, you know, during the first part. But when I'm ready, are there things that I need to do? Because again, like you said, we need to prepare your womb, you know, for the same. So preparation, what exactly does that look like? And then the chances of a pregnancy, right? Yeah.
So preparing the womb actually is much easier. It's just some tablets that you will take. So that's the beauty, that it's tablets that you'll take probably 3 or 2 times a day for about 12 to 14 days. We'll do some scans, maybe 3 scans, just to check that the progress of the lining of the uterus, because the womb has to, it looks a certain way. I'm going to say my beautiful. It looks a certain way on the screen that will allow us to know that it's ready. It needs to have a certain thickness. It needs to have some blood supply that we can see on the screen in terms of an ultrasound. And once we are there, then we would schedule your procedure about 3 to 5 days later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what exactly does the procedure look like? Yes.
The procedure for embryo transfer, because that's now an embryo transfer, it's not bad. It's actually, no, it's not surgical. You are awake, so you experience the procedure with us. I think the thing that our patients don't like is the discomfort of having a full bladder, because you have to have a full bladder. Yes, so we prepare you by having a full bladder, and the full bladder is because we need to put a scan on top of your lower abdomen so that we can visualize as the embryo is going in. Yeah, so that's why there's a full bladder. So because of the discomfort, you're full, and then there's somebody sticking everyone who's done a pelvic ultrasound knows that feeling. And then on top of that, we have to put a speculum. So if you've had a pap smear, the speculum is what opens up for us, the birth canal, for us to see. Yeah, so there's pressure on both points, and then we put it in. But really, it's a 5-minute procedure, so it is you can bear the discomfort. Most patients will be able to bear the discomfort, unless they're patients who have other issues in terms of some structural issues. So those patients we might put to sleep for the procedure, but about 90 or 95% of the patients will go through.
You'll be good to go. Okay. And then, so after the procedure, you're supposed to lie down for what, 15, 20 minutes? They say that?
But according, well, there's no science about it. I've had patients who go say, "Doc, I'm gone. I'm going to work. I'm done." So, and that's okay, and they still get pregnant. But I mean, psychologically, I do feel that it would be better to lie down, rest, ease. It's a very tense procedure because at the end of 2 weeks, we're going to be doing a pregnancy test, and those emotions can really spill over. So I feel that, I mean, out here we actually ask you to lie down for about 45 minutes, and then when you go home, maybe take some rest. Mental rest is the most important. So if you have a job that's very stressful and stuff, we tell you please don't. Of course, we don't allow you to engage in sexual intercourse with your partner because of what we've just done. But apart from that, people ask me about diet and what. Nah, it's not about your food.
I couldn't understand, because then you're saying, you know what, you need to prepare your womb before, and then after the embryo transfer, I can imagine why one would want to really be considerate about what they take, what they do, and all those things. Okay, so avoid, things that are very strenuous and stressful and all those things for what?
Maybe the 2 weeks, because that's when the results come out. Yeah, and I don't want it to be a blame game. So patients were like, but I took a walk. Maybe it's that, or I went for, I went for a jog, or So it's better just relax. Yeah, it's 2 weeks, or sometimes it's 11. Depends on what stage we put your embryo back to. It's 11 days or 9 days, really.
All right. So in the event that then there's no pregnancy, right? At that time, which can be unfortunate, really. So what happens? Do you give someone some bit of time before maybe trying again, or what usually happens?
If you have embryos stored up, there's some people who want to. I want this baby this year. Let's try again, and those are patients who have processed that it didn't work, are okay emotionally, and are ready to go. But a lot of times it's really a toll. I mean, you can imagine you froze your oocytes at maybe 35, you've come back at 40, this process didn't work, something you've thought would happen automatically. So maybe I usually advise a month or two just to debrief, de-stress, and even get some counseling support.
Absolutely is important. Okay. So, and of course, understanding all this procedure and the different options and all those things. Someone might say, listen, so before I consider all these things, what are some of the myths and misconceptions that you have had? Because there's a lot out there, really, as far as infertility or subfertility. Subfertility is another term that you like to use. I remember that, is concerned. So, and there's a lot of misconceptions surrounding that. So I'm trying to imagine, when it comes to egg freezing and the whole process about IVF, there's so many things that you must have heard, that we want to put the record straight.
One is that it's not done here. I've actually had someone come for IVF and say, oh, I'm going to South Africa for egg freezing. I'm like, why would you do that? But it's because they don't know what the process is. It's actually easier than the whole IVF process. So it is done in Kenya. So please, you don't need to go and store your oocytes in another country and have them transported to Kenya for all this. It's like 600,000 to transport them here. I mean, it's ridiculous. So it's done here. Two is that it is not an insurance policy. Please, people say, oh, I've frozen and I'm okay. Sometimes it doesn't work, even with your 20, even with your 30 oocytes. So I do ask couples or women, let's have the whole perspective of our lives together. At 20, at 25, at 30, what do I want? Is the family in the picture? If a family is in the picture, please and there's no perfect man, Winnie. We're not waiting for this Range Rover guy. There's no perfect man. So I mean, there's an 80-20 rule. Take your 80, by the way.
Right.
Okay.
I see that. And then the whole aspect about this solves everything, right? You come in, it doesn't solve. Doesn't solve.
It's also, people come at even 40, 45, and they don't know that it's going to be difficult. They're like, now, nimejaribu kila kitu, I've come at 45 for IVF. I'm like, I'm sorry, it's a bit too late.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. So plan earlier. Right?
Just have a perspective. Get educated, get the knowledge. And this is why we're doing this show. Get the knowledge.
Okay, so just in case someone maybe tuned in a little bit late and they didn't catch the part where we're like, okay, this is what the straws look like when they're in there. Can we just see that? Listen,
no problem. The guy is here. Matthew is here, he can do it.
Sure, but of course, like I said, different, different tanks, and of course, different, again, one is used for transportation, like I said, this one. So yeah, has to be under minus 196. 196 has to be sterile. There's so many straws in here, color coordinated. All right, and like you said, again, one can hold various compartments, like 1, 2. Oh wait, no, this is 5, 6, 6, 1. I can't even pretend to understand what that is all about, but yeah, and like you said, we cannot have this outside for a long period. We cannot have that for a long period of time. All right, Daktari, so I think we've learned pretty much everything that we needed to learn, really, as far as egg freezing is concerned. Do you want to speak a little bit about sperm freezing? Is it the same?
Actually, sperm freezing is a lot easier. A lot easier. Yeah, I think, guys, that's the thing. And men did their technology. It's been long, and it's done, and it's so So for men, it's easier. Of course, they'll give a sample, and sometimes even from one sample, we can get 3 different vials, which can be used for 3 different treatments. So for men, they have more in one. Ejaculate, so but the process is not as, it's not like a woman's process.
Like the injections,
and
all those things. Okay, but then again, you have to look at a few things, right? The process might not be as intense as for the woman, but you have to look at a few things. Remember, like we said earlier on, a bit of a concern on the quality, of the sperm. So what is it that we check?
So for sperm, of course, there's a lot of factors that we check. If you have a normal sperm, like I've said, the patients who their spouses are outside, it's been 5 years, they don't have children, those very easy, and they get even very easily pregnant because we're not. But for patients who there is a problem, sometimes we do refuse to freeze because the thaw of sperm is also, we don't thaw all the sperm. We could freeze 15 million sperm and maybe get 3 million. Depending on the quality, on the numbers, on how they look morphologically. So for me, it's important that we first do a semen analysis. So we check the semen in terms of the numbers. They must be above 40 million. They must be in a concentration of above 15 million per ml. They must look a certain way. The normal sperm should be between 4 to 20% in terms of the way they look. That are normal. They have a normal head, they have a tail, and they have a mid piece, and they must be moving at a speed of about 32%. 32% must be moving well. So if those parameters are not matched, then sometimes we have a problem with thaw. And therefore then we consider, what is your sample then at the end going to be used for? If it's for an IVF cycle, we only have 10 to 15 eggs. We only need 10 to 15 sperm. So that we can, but if it's for an artificial insemination cycle where we need a lot of sperm, it may not be that we can freeze for that aspect.
Is age a factor as well? Because again, like we said, for women, it gets to a certain age where you're like, listen, no.
There is in terms of male fertility, but it's not like a woman. At 80, people can still have children. What we need to look at very importantly right now is what are the factors. Of course, if you have a poor sperm factor now, and I think there's a myth that is going around that I'll take these medications, all these antioxidants, and it will be good. That's not true. Yes. It will not improve like from a number of 2 million to go to 40 million. So that's something that we have to consider, and that factor will get worse with time. So you may have 2 million sperm right now, and in 5 years there's none, or it's 200. So it's very important, just like for women where our eggs are low and they deplete very fast, that can happen for men as well.
They say after 40 is where you start seeing a bit of a depletion. I don't know whether that's true or that is one of the other myths that are 35,
but steeper 43.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so to prevent all those things, so then what do we do in terms of just being cautious and being mindful about, number one, our health, but also the decisions that we make? Because like you said, you have to be cognizant of the fact that do you want children, do you not, at what age, and all those things. But can we just first of all address lifestyle, right? Okay. What is it that we need to do?
I think, one, there are also environmental toxins, and we have to really think about that. I mean, our air is not what it used to be. So that there's a interesting study that that is going on right now about what is the effect of that. But I guess being healthy is the most important. I mean, right now we are seeing even children who are obese. I mean, there's obesity in childhood that like we've never seen. All these factors, plus what we eat, these cuckoos that are given antibiotics and steroids and whatever, it's all going to affect our fertility later on. So I think a healthy diet is extremely important. More greens, more rich foods, more colorful foods, your capsicum, your, terere, managus, more indigenous and grown well, will in the long run help. But we're not saying that if I have fertility now and I start eating, it may help, but we haven't had a study that can actually tell us how much of that will affect. But for our children, I think, and for the future generation, I think eating healthy, movement,
we're very
we drive in our car, we go, and that's it. So movement also will help, because body fat and all affect our fertility as well in terms of our hormones.
I see that. So then as we bring this to a close, right, and like we said, now egg freezing, IVF is not covered by insurance, right? So take this as a parting shot. What will it take for us to get there?
I think that we may get there if we demand for it from our employers, I think, because our employers, I mean, if in the States they're doing oocyte freezing, I mean, I feel that big techs and employers of big companies can add that, and actually, like Standard Chartered have added it. It's interesting. I mean, big corporates are able to muscle insurances and tell them, this is for our staff, we would like this. Yes, they may pay a bit of a higher premium, but I've seen it really helps.
It really helps. All right, but before that happens, let's just take care of ourselves, plan our lives and our future. And again, if you are thinking about it and all those things, now you have the information, right? So I think it's just about making a decision. But Dr. Ndegwa, thank you so much really for hosting us today, and helping us understand all those things as far as egg freezing and sperm and embryo is concerned. So now I know better all the myths and misconceptions. I hope that we have demystified all of them. So we have to say goodbye. My name is Winnie Lubem, and of course a special thanks to Dr. Wanjiru Ndegwa for hosting us today, fertility expert, and as well as the founder of Footsteps to Fertility right here in Nairobi. I'll see you next week, right? I'll see you next week right here on Your World. But until then, stay safe. A special thanks to everybody who put together the show. We have more on the camera. We have Gatiri, we have Mabel as well, producer, and everybody else back in the gallery. But for now, have yourselves a lovely day ahead and stay safe. Goodbye.